Hello everyone, my name is Rick. I'm one of the support technicians here at Storix, and today we are going to do a training titled Protecting Linux Systems that Use DM Multipath. And this training will be centered around how to set up and support backing up and restoring to multipath devices. So first off, what is multipath? Well, multipath refers to a system that uses multiple physical paths between the CPU and some kind of mass storage device. There are a couple advantages to doing things this way. That is, it normally is invisible to the application layer, so an application will just see a drive while underneath this multipath system will be going on. The reason that people want to implement it as system admins is that it provides a little bit of fault tolerance and performance enhancement. And it does that because you'll have two or more paths from your CPU to that drive, which means that if one goes down, you have other routes to that disk, and also certain multipath implementations can provide performance enhancement such as load balancing or a combined greater throughput. And an example of multipath would be using two SCSI cards to connect to the same drive. So why is multipath so complex? Well, first off, there are many different naming conventions. That is, the drives can get named in a bunch of different ways, which makes device detection a little bit difficult. Also, you've got the UUID issue on top of that. So there's a lot that goes into just the detection of these devices when you're digging a little lower than the application layer, which is what Storix does, not on a normal backup and data recovery implementation, but if we're doing a bare metal recovery. Now, another complexity that we face is vendor cooperation and access. With something like device mapper multipath, that is something that is open source, so it's very easy for us to work with. There are other vendors that have made it a little harder for us to get a hold of documentation or drivers, and thus it's a bit harder for us to support their implementations. So our official statement is that we fully support Empath in certain configurations. And the reason is that we want to make sure that the Storix software is properly aware of your hardware. So let's talk about DM Multipath versus EMC Powerpath. So DM Multipath is the Linux open source version. EMC has a pretty popular implementation called Powerpath that they use on several of their SAN devices. Our SBAdmin software only supports full system recovery to DM multipath devices. So those would be devices that have the package Multipath Tools installed in Linux. Now, you can do system recovery to, for example, an EMC Powerpath device, but that's going to require a little bit of manual intervention. And finally, regular data backup and recovery, that is file level backup and recovery, is supported for both types of devices because, as I said earlier, when you're working on the application level, it's just seen as a drive. So if you're just backing up a certain amount of files or directories, you should have no problem in any implementation. Here's what we're going to do in today's demo. The first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and run a backup on a multipath system. This is assuming you haven't done any configuration and you have a multipath system and you want to run Storix, but specifically the reason I'm doing this is I want to show what a failure looks like. That way we're going to go through and diagnose those failures, and then I'm going to show you the Empath guide, and we're going to use that as a sort of walkthrough to fix failures. After that, we're going to create boot media with Empath support, and then finally I'm going to show you what it looks like to restore from a non-multipath system onto a multipath system. So first off, we need to talk about some software requirements. For a basic multipath setup to work using full system recovery with the Storix SBAdmin software, you need to be running a Linux operating system, and you need to have a minimum level of these three packages installed. So for DM Multipath Tools, you need to have version 0.4.5 or above. For the device mapper package, you need version 1.02 or above. And for UDEV, doing your device detection, you need to have version 039-10 or above. And when we get started with the live hands-on demo, I'll show you how you can determine what level that you're at in your software packages. All right, so let's first talk about doing an Empath backup. Let's go ahead and see that. All right, so I have a terminal window open here, and I've SSH'd into a system called Empath. Empath is a multipath system, and I'm going to go ahead and start the SBAdmin software by typing SBAdmin. Now, the first thing you'll notice is that I've already got some clients and servers and backup jobs already configured. If you don't know how to install or start the software, if you don't know how to add clients, add servers, how to configure a basic backup job, don't worry. At the end of this training, I'm going to show you a resource you can go to that will get you videos on how to do all of that stuff. So just hold tight and we'll get you caught up. Now let me run down quickly what I have going on here. So Empath is the system we're on. It's the admin system. It's the system running the network edition of the software. And you'll see that it is also configured as a client. We are going to be, for the first part of this demonstration, running a full system backup of Empath. So it's the network admin, it's also a backup client. Again, that flexibility of the software we talk about all the time, where the client role, the server role, and the admin role are all kept separately, and you can basically mix and match. RH64X64KVM is both a client and a server. It's going to be our main backup server. That's where we're shoving all the backups to. And then finally, this guy Dellbox doesn't exist yet. It is a physical piece of hardware that also supports multipath. So there's multipath here and multipath here. RH64X64KVM is a single disk system. It's non-multipath. So for the first part of the demonstration, I'm going to be running a backup job of Empath to RH64X64KVM. In the second part of the demo, I'm going to be taking a backup of RH64X64KVM that I already ran and stored on itself, and I'm going to be migrating that over to the Dellbox. So I'm going to be going from a single disk system to a multipath system, which is one of the challenges that we've talked about. So let's look at our jobs. Single disk is that backup job that I ran of RH64X64KVM to get the full system backup of it. So we won't need to worry about that right now. The other job I have here is called test, very original. And let's take a look at it. It's very basic. We're going to run a full system backup to that server. The only one we're backing up is Empath. Again, that's our multipath system. And I don't have any other options selected other than just stick that backup in the shared directory so I can get to it later. So let's go ahead and run it and see what happens. You see here it's been dropped into the queue, and if I grab the status output, it hasn't started running the backup, and before I could even get to the output messages, it actually just dumped the output to me and said, hey, there's a problem here. We started up, but the job ended and no data was backed up, and here's why. Device mapper multipath devices have been found on this system, but links to these devices could not be found in /dev/empath. Refer to the SBAdmin device mapper multipath devices guide. This is going to be your bread and butter for configuring multipath. And just in case you're not used to going to our website, I'm actually going to jump over there right now because there's so much good stuff on here that's going to help you out in case it's after hours and you can't get one of us on the phone or get your support ticket answered right away. So I'm just going to go to Storix.com, and we have to scroll a little bit because I'm running at such a low resolution for this video, but go to Support, User Guides, and if you scroll down here, scroll down here, you'll see the basic user guide, the quick start guide, all good stuff. The command reference guide if you want to run at the command line interface, and here's the one we need, device mapper multipath. So let's open it up, and we're actually going to use this as sort of a primer to walk us through step by step what do we need to do to make sure that Multipath is configured correctly so that the Storix SBAdmin software can support it? So this little introduction tells you all the stuff that I already started with. And then remember we talked about minimum software requirements. This is where you find out what those software requirements were. So let's check first off and make sure we have those. And we do that by, and we don't need that anymore. Let's grab our, there we go, our window here. We do that on this system by typing RPM -Q and then the name of the software package. So we had 3 of them, those 3 right here. So we need to do DM Multipath tools. Oh, actually, in some cases, and it says right here, it may also be known as device mapper multipath. So let's try that again and check to see if it's under that name, device mapper multipath. And there we go. So on this system, that's what it's called. So double check under either of those package names. And here we've got version 0.4.9. We need 0.4.5, so we know we're new enough. Next, let's look at the device mapper package. We need 1.02. We've got 1.02 and then a little bit, so we're good there. And last, we need to check on the version of UDEV. We needed version 0.39. We've got version 1.4.7, so obviously we're covered there. So that's good. Let's go ahead and see what's next. So next is device detection requirements. For device naming, it's telling us right here that we need to make sure that the user-friendly name setting in etc multipath is set up. So let's go, or etc multipath.conf. So let's go ahead and look at that file. So vi etc multipath.conf. And right here at the top, we see user-friendly names, yes. So we're set up here. If this says no, or if it's missing, you need to fix that stanza. So we'll go ahead and quit out of here and switch back and see what's next. So next is that we need to have the symbolic links in dev empath. Let's look right now and see what's in dev empath. So cd dev empath. Okay, that's a problem. The directory doesn't even exist, so obviously we're missing something we need. Now, the engineers at Storix have made things very simple for us. They've created a rule that will set everything up automatically, and all we have to do is actually just copy this . Okay, that puts the rule where it needs to go, and then to trigger that rule, we need to type one of these 2 commands here. One will work, one won't. That's how you know you've used the right one. So let's see, let's copy this guy. UDEV ADM trigger. Okay, we didn't get an error, so we know that's the right one. And now if we go back and try to get to that directory, now we can get in there and we see that the links have been created. One important thing to note here is the naming convention. So we see that we've got a naming convention that goes empath, and then a letter, and then P, and then a number. And this is going to come into play at the very next thing we need to configure. And that is, we need to configure the naming scheme. And these are some very common naming schemes that we see and that we've tested. If you have a different naming scheme, it is possible to set it up in here manually, but these are the ones that you'll normally see. So we know that our scheme is empath, then some kind of a letter, then P for partition, and then some kind of a number. So we need to go into opt Storix config device info and find this section here and uncomment the one that matches what we're doing. So let's go ahead and do that. So vi opt Storix config device info. And let's go ahead and just search for multipath. And that gets us to the correct section we need. Okay. In this case, everything's commented out, so it's not using any rule to do device detection, which means it's never going to find anything. Now we need the one that went empath, some letter, then a P, then a number. So here's the one that we need. All we need to do is uncomment that and go ahead and write and quit. And that's that. All right, that gets us through that section. Now the last thing it's going to tell you to do, this is a pretty good thing to take note of, is it's going to tell you to copy the file we just edited into Storix config device info. So let's do that, and while we're doing that, I'll tell you why you want to do that. All right, so opt Storix config is your active or your working config directory. It's where the running version of the Storix software is going to look for its configuration. This directory, Storix config, is where the source files originate. Now, if you upgraded your version of Storix, it is going to overwrite anything in opt Storix config device info. So you might have configured your multipath correctly, and then you go and you upgrade the software to the newest version, and all of a sudden your multipath doesn't work. And you could have configured that a year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, who knows, and now it doesn't work, and you don't remember what you did, you just know it doesn't work now. By copying it into Storix config device info, what will happen is when you upgrade our software, the installer will check and say, oh, is there a device info file in there? Okay, once I'm done installing, grab that file and copy it back into the current working directory so that it no longer is overwritten. That way, when you upgrade our software, your multipath devices are still recognized. Everything's still configured the way you wanted it. So that's a good best practice to do. And then finally on here, it talks a little bit about entries in Etsy FS tab. We haven't had any problems with this in a very, very long time. So unless you've done everything else and you're still having problems, you can go ahead and skip this section. So that gets us through all of the setup that we needed to do. Let's go back and check SBAdmin. There it is. And let's go ahead and rerun that job and see if everything got fixed. Now, we don't even have to restart the software. That's one of the beautiful things about this. Okay, so it's started up. And let's see what the output is showing us. And it looks like we're good. It says it's already generated the file list, and it's starting to write the file system. If we go over here, you can see the backup is progressing normally. So we fixed it. So that's the first part of the training, was just getting things configured correctly on the system so that those multipath disks are recognized so you can run a full system backup correctly. We're going to go ahead and close this. The software does continue running even if you have the window closed, so we don't need it open, and we're going to move on to the second half of the training. So for the second half of the training, as I promised, we're going to talk about doing an empath restore. So there are a few special considerations you need to look at when you're restoring with a multipath system involved. The first one is if you're doing empath to empath, if you're just restoring the system to itself. You've got a backup of it, something happens, you need to restore the system onto the same machine, no problems. If you're going from a multipath system to a non-multipath system, no problems, nothing special you need to do. Now when you go from a non-empath system to an empath system doing a migration, that's when things get a little bit interesting. So there are a couple steps you need to take first that will make your life much easier. The first thing is on that non-empath system, the one that you're going to be backing up and then migrating, you need to install those empath tools. So those 3 packages that we looked at, the Device Mapper Multipath, Device Mapper, and UDEV, install those on your non-multipath system. That way when you get it restored onto your multipath machine, the software's already installed. You don't need to worry about installing it once it's there. The second thing you want to do after you've installed those tools is then create your boot media and run your full system backup. And then one final note, if for some reason that's not an option, let's say you had a non-multipath system, you ran a full system backup job, and then that system died, it blew up, and the only other system you have to restore it onto is a multipath system, don't worry, we can still get you up and running. It's going to take a little bit more work, so go ahead and give us a call here at Storix Support and we'll step you through that. So it is possible, it's just going to be a lot more difficult. So optimally, if you can prepare for this in advance, if you know that you're going to be migrating from a non-empath to an empath system, go ahead and take those steps first. All right, so now that we've talked about empath migration, let's go ahead and take a look at it. All right, I've got a window open here to the Dell box. I went ahead and attached the boot ISO to that box and booted up and have the display exported here onto my system. So when you boot up an ISO, this is the first screen that you're going to see. And I'd like to say that this is the only blue screen that you'll ever be happy about seeing. The first thing that we need to do when we get here is select an installation device and a backup. So since we are installing from a remote device, we're going to go ahead and set the network settings. And I'll go ahead and put those in now. The IP address of the server, which again is the RH64x64 KVM system that we looked at earlier, is 192.168.1.234. The IP address that the Dell box is going to have is 10.10.0.2. Since it is on a different subnet, we need to give it a gateway address. And I'll put that in there. And then this is a Class B network, so give it the correct mask. And then we press F4 and select the proper network card. I'm using ETH0 here. And hit escape, and it's going to tell us that things have changed a little bit, so we need to make sure that we select the proper backup. Okay, so we go to remote disk backup, and remember it was in that shared directory. And there's the single disk job that I ran earlier, and also there's that test job that we ran during the previous portion. Now we're restoring from the original client, RH64x64 KVM, that was that single disk system. And it's actually going to keep running. We're migrating, that's why we had to give a different IP address, because we're essentially going to have a clone of the same computer up and running on a different subnet. So now that that's done, normally we would go in and hit install the system. And the software is going to go through and it's going to verify that everything works. And it's telling us, well, I can do this for you, but, and it says right here, I can accommodate this, but the disks don't match, and since there are additional disks, I'm going to recommend that you should actually change this configuration, or at least view it before proceeding. So I could just say, you know what, Storix software, I trust you, go ahead and do it, but I'm going to go ahead and do what it recommends and view the installation settings and see what the disks are looking like. Now, the way things are set up here is that this is sort of the before and after. So on the left side here we have the before. This is what was available on the original system. So this is what we were looking at on the RH64x64 KVM. So it had one disk SDA, it had about 5 gigs of data on it. Now it's telling me my current disk, the Dell box, has an SDA and an SDB. Suspiciously, they are exactly the same size. And that's telling me those are probably the same disk and it's just 2 different paths to the disk. So if I installed from here, I could just, as it said, let Storix take over and automatically install. What it's going to do is install from SDA there to SDA here, and it'll run, but it's not going to use this other channel, which will effectively turn my Dell box multipath into a single path system. So that's not what we want to do. We purposely have a multipath system. We want to use the multipath functionality. So we need to get that enabled. And the first thing that we need to do, now that we have everything going, is we'd want to make sure that the config device info file has the line in there uncommented that we needed. So if we go to System Recovery Utilities and to a maintenance shell, we can go ahead and edit that file. And that's opt storix config device info. And again, we'll just search for multipath. And it's already uncommented. So, and we know that this is the style of naming that's used on the devices that are attached to this box. So I'm going to go ahead and quit out of there. And that's all I needed to look at in there. So since I know that's correct, I am ready to go ahead and load the handlers that will take care of finding the multipath devices. So we're going to do that also in System Recovery Utilities, and we're going to do that with this first option, load additional SCSI or fiber channel adapter modules. And you will need to know which module you're looking for. In my case, it's one near the very bottom here for the EMC family multipath. I know what kind of hardware I've got in there. Alright, so it's going to go ahead and not only load the handler, but then it's going to go through and search the system and find out how many multipath devices there are on the system, what they're named, and all of that. So it'll take a few moments for this to happen. Alright, it says it worked and it detected SDA SDB as Empath A, which is exactly what we wanted it to do. And we don't need to load anything else. So we're going to escape out here. Now what it's warning us about is you changed devices, so if you had done any special configuration stuff, that got wiped out and you're going to have to start again. Now we didn't actually change any of the configuration settings, but I'm going to go back in here just so that you can see what happened. Okay, and it's giving us that same warning. So now let's look at what the disks look like. And you'll see here we have our multipath A, one disk to one disk. Now, a weird thing with Unix is that it's now saying that the original data was on Empath A. We know it was on SDA because it was on a single disk, but it doesn't matter. We know we're going from now, the way the system sees it, the way the application layer sees it, it's going from one disk to one disk. But we know that really this is one disk with multipath installed. So we're all done here. Escape out. And go ahead and install, and now it's not giving us any problems. And it's telling us one last time, are you sure you want to continue with the system installation? We go ahead and hit yes, and it goes on and it does its thing. So that's all we need to do there. Now, if you've watched any of our other demos or seen other videos, you've seen what this looks like, so we're not going to sit here and just watch it install. With that done, that is the end of this training, and I want to thank you for joining us. Now, remember I did promise at the very beginning that I would point you to a resource for other training videos, and that's right here at youtube.com/user/Storix software. That will provide you with a whole bunch of our training videos to help you really get a good handle on what to do with our software. Or you can go to YouTube and just search for Storix, and our profile will pop right up. And if you haven't installed our software yet, you can get a free trial of it at www.storix.com/free trial. So we'd like to thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, just go ahead and head over to storix.com and you can contact us through the website. Thanks a lot.